Hi, James Lee Job here with some poems, or rather prose poems, for you this week from Francis Ponge, the French poet. By the way, I'm here with my little friend, Porkless Pig, keeping me company in a room that I don't use for anything else. Anyway, here is what Robert Bly had to say about Francis Ponge. He's one of the wittiest poets who's ever lived. He's fond of prose poems, and his are unlike anyone else's. He leaps out of the wooden chest of French political verse and academic poetry, and, adopting all of the rhetoric power of traditional French prose, begins pointing to objects such as a clump of blackberries, a closed oyster, a dinner plate, a tree losing its leaves in fall. He is the inventor of what we these days call the thing poem. Thing poem. Thing poetry is poetry where the poet is not in the poem. It might be a poem about a book, but you just do not put yourself in the poem. Ponge was born in 1899 in France. He moved to Paris as a young man and lived there for most of his life. He took part in the French resistance against the Nazis. How about that? A poet who is against fascism. How do you like that, President Dump? Suits me just fine. His first book was called The Side Taken by Things. He began it in 1922 and it was published in 1942. He worked on it for many years. Albert Camus noticed the book and helped promote it and helped promote Ponge's career. He was also friends with Picasso. In 1966, Ponge was a visiting professor at both Bernard College and Columbia University, and he passed away at his home in Paris in 1988 at 89 years of age. This is a group of prose poems, and when you hear them, you'll hear the poem in the prose poem. They are written in paragraph form, see? And I'm going to give you a few of these. Thanks for watching today, by the way. Trees lose parts of themselves inside a circle of fog. Inside the fog that encloses the trees, they undergo a stripping. Thrown into confusion by a slow oxidation and humiliated by the sap's withdrawal for the sake of the fruits and flowers, the leaves, following the hot spells of August, cling less anyway. The up and down tunnels inside the bark deepen and guide the moisture down to earth so as to break off with the more animated parts of the trees. The flowers are scattered, the fruits brought down. This giving up of their more animated parts, and even parts of their body, has become, since their earliest days, a familiar pattern for trees. The frog. When rain, like metal tips, bounces off the sodden pastures, an amphibious dwarf, an Ophelia with empty sleeves, barely as large as a fist, rises at times from around the poet's feet and then hurtles herself into the nearest pool. Let this nervous one flee. How beautiful her legs are! A glove impermeable to water envelops her body. Barely flesh at all, her long muscles in their elegance are neither animal nor fish. In order to escape from my fingers, the virtue of fluid allies in her with the battle of life force. She puffs, widely goitered, and this heart that beats so strongly, the wrinkly eyelids, the old woman's mouth, move me to set her free. He actually did put himself in that one, so that one is not a thing poem. The end of the fall. What fall amounts to is really a cold infusion. The dead leaves of all herb species steep in the rain, but no fermenting goes on, no alcohol making. One has to wait until spring to see the effect a compress has when applied to a wooden leg. The counting of votes goes on chaotically. All of the doors of the polling places fly open and slam shut. Into the wastebasket! Into the wastebasket! Nature rips up her manuscripts, tears down her library, knocks down the last fruits with long poles. Then she rises crisply from her work table. Her height all at once seems unusual. Her hair undone, she has her head in the fog. Arms loose, she breathes in with ecstasy the icy wind that makes all her ideas clear. The days are short, the night falls swiftly. Who needs comedy? Earth floating among the other planets regains her serious look. Her sunlit side is narrower, invaded by clefts of shadow. Her shoes, like a hobo's, are great with water and a source of music. Inside this frog pond, or entergenic ambiguity, everything regains strength, hops from stone to stone, tries a new field. Streams increase. Here you see what is called a real soaking, a cleaning that cares nothing for respectability, dressed as a naked man, soaked to the bone. And it goes on, doesn't get dry right away. 3 months of healthy reflecting goes on in this state, without any circulatory disaster, without bathrobe, without horsehair glove. But her strong constitution can take it. And so, when the tiny buds begin to point, they know what they are doing and what is going on. And if they come out hesitatingly, numb and flushed, it is all in full knowledge of why. Ah, well, but there hangs another tale. That may follow from, but certainly doesn't have the smell of, the black wooden ruler, which I will now use to draw my line under this present story. We're reading some prose poems by Francis Ponge. These are all translated by Robert Bly, by the way, whose translations I deeply love. I don't buy Starbucks coffee. However, the giant mug is an asset. The Three Shops. Near the Place Maubert, at the spot where each morning early I wait for the bus, 3 shops stand side by side. Jewels, coal and firewood, butcher. Observing them in turn, I notice how differently it seems to me metal, precious stones, coal, woodchucks, slice of raw meat behave. We won't linger too long over the metals, which are only the result of man's exploitative and divisive influence on muds or on certain conglomerate rocks that by themselves had no such intentions, nor the precious stones whose rarity correctly suggests that one give to them only a few exquisite words during a discourse on nature so equitably arranged. As for the raw meat, a certain shiver as I look, a kind of horror or empathy obliges me to the greatest discretion. Moreover, when freshly sliced, a veil of steam or smoke screens them from the very eyes that would want to reveal certain, one might properly say, cynical thoughts. I will have said all I can say when I have drawn attention for 1 minute to something panting in their appearance. The contemplation of firewood and coal, however, is a source of delights as immediate as they are sober and certain, which I would be pleased to share. Without doubt, that would require several pages, when I, in fact, have here only half of one. That is why I set a limit and propose to you the following subject for your meditations. 1. Time that is occupied with radiuses of a circle always revenges itself by death. 2. Because it is brown and brown is midway between green and black on the road to carbon, the wood's destiny involves, though in a small degree, a series of exploits, that is to say, error itself, mistakes, and every possible misunderstanding. The Delights of the Door. I especially love this prose poem, and I heard Robert Bly read it once, the translator here, and he pointed out that, as the line in this poem says, kings don't touch doors. Someone always opens the door for him. And he leaned forward and looked at us all. This was during the Reagan administration, and said, Reagan hasn't touched a door in years. The Delights of the Door by Francis Ponge. Kings don't touch doors. They don't know this joy to push affectionately or fiercely before us one of those huge panels we know so well, when to turn back in order to replace it, holding a door in our arms. The pleasure of grabbing one of those tall barriers to a room abdominally by its porcelain knot of this swift fighting body to body, when the forward motion for an instant halted, the eye opens, and the whole body adjusts to its new surroundings. But the body still keeps one friendly hand on the door, holding it open, then decisively pushes the door away, closing itself in, which the click of the powerful but well-oiled spring pleasantly confirms. We're going to read one more here. We're going to close with The Candle. The Candle. Night at times revives a curious plant whose light makes powerfully furnished rooms fall apart into clumps of shadow. Its gold leaf stands unmoved, attached to the hollow of a small column of alabaster by a pure black leaf stalk. One word, leaf stalk. The seedy moths attack it rather than attacking the too high moon that turns the woods to mist. But scorched in an instant, or overstrained in the skirmish, they all tremble on the brink of a mania close to stupor. The candle, meanwhile, by the way it flickers its rays on the book as it suddenly discharges its original gases, urge the reader on. Then bends over to its plate and drowns in what has always fed it. Some poems by Francis Ponge, P-O-N-G-E, Francis Ponge, P-O-N-G-E. If you have liked these prose poems, please look up Francis Ponge and find some more on your own, which I hope you always do anyway. So I'm going to say goodbye, and Porkless Pig is going to say goodbye, right, Porkless? I want everyone to take care, and I'll be back soon with some more poems for you.